Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, June 11th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we begin this evening with breaking news. A brush fire in the East County has forced people to evacuate. It started just before 12:30 this afternoon in the 17,000 block of Skyline Truck Trail in Lawson Valley near Hamul. Evacuation orders were issued for nearby homes. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman is live now with the latest. Matt.
Maya, that fire out here in the East County has burned at least 100 acres, though CAL FIRE crews telling us this evening, as of right now, they are in the mop-up stage out here, though. I want to show you behind us, though. The fire started just about after noon today. You can still see a big plume of smoke over there. A lot of crews out here today trying to take care of this. Started off Skyline Truck Trail around noontime, and that was about 5 acres, and then it exploded to 100 acres, and we just got an update. It's still at about 100 acres, 10% containment. We did get a chance to talk to CAL FIRE, who says right now they're out there with these not dumpsters, they're out there with these big trucks that are moving land and everything, try to clean up the scene out here. Lots of chainsaws out here cutting down trees. Now, this did get very close to homes, as you can see in this video here. Lots of helicopters out making water drops. We did have a chance to talk to CAL FIRE. They said that no structures, that's like a home, there were some that were threatened, but none of them, to their knowledge, were destroyed. No injuries have been reported out of this fire here. Now, interestingly enough, though, we did talk about there were some evacuations out early in the afternoon here, and COVID-19 is only complicating those efforts. Now, the Red Cross, who operates these evacuation shelters, they say that they're having to get creative during the outbreak.
Typically, when the Red Cross shelters people, I'm sure you've seen pictures of it, there'll be hundreds of people in a high school gym or something like that with cots pretty close to each other, making sure people have a safe and secure place to sleep. That's not going to work in a COVID environment.
Yeah, so that means the Red Cross, they say that they're going to have to provide hotel rooms, maybe dorm rooms, or even the RV at campgrounds, or maybe even use some small shelters if they have to. They've identified more than 36 covered parking lots to be used if an evacuation is needed. Now, there was an evacuation point out here at a movie theater out here in the East County area. Is one of those covered areas that has covered solar parking to protect people where they kind of wait out there in the heat. As we come back out here live for you, crews are still battling the Skyline fire. We did mention to you, it did come close to homes, though. As fire crews say, though, no homes made it. We had a chance to talk to a homeowner who said it came right up to his property. We saw it. You can't see the flames now, but they are still smoldering. But as we heard from CAL FIRE, they are in a mop-up operation out here in this area, but staying vigilant as more fires could break out. Here in the East County area, Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
And we'll be keeping our eye on that. Thanks, Matt. And more than 20 faith leaders from across San Diego County gathered together today to speak with one voice. They are demanding an end to police brutality, and they want to see reforms that will ensure fair and just treatment of everyone, regardless of their skin color. Here's KPBS reporter John Carroll.
They came together as part of the San Diego Organizing Project, a nonprofit representing nearly 30 congregations across the county. Here's a sampling of the various ways they demanded the same thing: an end to police brutality and the elimination of systemic racism in our society.
Daily, in our own lives and in our society, we rupture the compact we have with God through racism and structures of racism. And we cannot stand silent.
The work of dismantling racism is not work for black people to do. This is white people's work. We have to do this work. We have power. We have influence. We white people have benefited from racist systems in ways that we don't even realize, even when we personally would never knowingly do a racist act.
There are those who would like to keep us silent, but as we continue to see what's happening in our country at this time, this day, this time, now more than ever, we need to speak up.
Let us repent of white privilege gained on the backs of black bodies. Let us repent of polite white society, our tone policing of righteous black anger. Let us repent of white economics and the looting of black America for white profit. Let us repent of white identities gained at the expense of our souls.
Police are supposed to enforce laws. They are not to be the prosecutor, judge, jury, and executioner against any person, especially against black people. I am here to say it is the job of white people to transform policing structures.
I'm here because my prophet taught me that whenever I see an injustice, I have to change it with my hand, take action. If I can't with my tongue, speak up against it. If I can't by my heart, pray.
The average racist don't go to my church. The average racist is in your congregation. The white supremacist is sitting on your deacon board. And I am challenging you as a man or woman of God to call it out and to call it what it is and to stand in your moral courage and stand in your moral strength so that you can help your fellow human being.
John Carroll, KPBS News.
The San Diego Police Chiefs and Sheriffs Association announced new steps in the interest of preventing violence during law enforcement citations. The new policies unanimously adopted by the group include strategies designed to de-escalate confrontational situations. The plan calls on police and sheriffs to, when possible, consider tactics that include pre-engagement to assess information before deploying personnel, de-escalation techniques to persuade suspects of crimes to voluntarily comply in order to resolve the citation safely and without the need for increased physical means, and disengagement to withdraw if individuals pose no security risk to others or could be apprehended under safer conditions. Police departments across the country have come under renewed scrutiny since the killing of George Floyd. Now, as Daryl Forges reports, President Trump is considering an executive order on police reform.
After protests against police brutality, the Trump administration is preparing an executive order on police reform.
The president has spent the last 10 days quietly and diligently working on proposals to address the issues that the protesters have raised across the country, legitimate issues.
From Minneapolis to Houston, cities and states across the country forbidding police officers from using chokeholds. Minnesota's governor calling the legislature into special session Friday to consider a statewide ban.
The world's watching how we act on this. Let's seize this moment.
Prohibiting chokeholds is part of the sweeping police reform legislation introduced by congressional Democrats. Republicans also working on their own police proposals. Both parties plan to bring the measures for a vote before the July 4th recess.
We will not rest until it becomes the law. We will not rest until the changes are made.
Demonstrators also demanding a change to the status quo. Across the country, statues of Confederate military leaders defaced and destroyed. This as a Republican-led Senate Armed Service Committee voted to remove the names of Confederate generals from places like military bases, aircraft, and ships. But President Trump vows to fight the action to, he says, preserve heritage. Daryl Forges, KPBS News.
San Diego Pride won't allow law enforcement agencies to participate in the parade or have a booth at the festival until reforms are met. In a letter to Mayor Kevin Faulconer, Pride officials asked that he and the city of San Diego complete 4 steps to support the Black LGBTQ community. Pride officials want the parade recognized as a free speech event, and that's not billed for road closures and safety. They're also calling for the city to adopt the 8 Can't Wait campaign recommendations and to support police policy reform recommendations centered on Black LGBTQ San Diegans. This year's Pride Parade and Festival were canceled and replaced with online events. Coming up, we'll take a look at San Diego's use of force policy and the obstacles that may stand in the way of change. Now for an update on the coronavirus in San Diego County. Today, county public health officials announced 3 more people have died from the virus and 161 cases. Nearly 5,000 tests were reported yesterday and 3% tested positive. Tomorrow, gyms, bars, day camps, and other businesses can resume operations with increased safety measures. More than 2 million people in the U.S. have been infected with the coronavirus, and that's according to Johns Hopkins University. 19 states are now seeing a rise in infections. While 9 California counties have seen increases, so far San Diego has not. Since the pandemic started, more than 112,000 people have died in the U.S. The Harvard Global Health Institute predicts 100,000 more deaths by September.
Right now, we have between 800 and 1,000 people dying every single day in America. And all of the models, all of the data suggests that things are going to get worse. We're going to have increases.
Governor Gavin Newsom says California is more prepared to battle the virus now than 2 or 3 months ago. Testing, contact tracing, and personal protective equipment are more widespread. Summer is finally here after months of distance learning amid the coronavirus pandemic, but San Diego area school districts are already preparing for the fall. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong explains the state's guidelines for reopening schools.
Earlier this week, California State Superintendent Tony Thurmond released a 50-page handbook on safely reopening schools. But he emphasized that it'll be up to individual districts to decide when and how students are allowed back on campuses.
School reopening is a matter that is decided locally. With 1,000 school districts in our state, all of our schools makes their own decision about when they might open according to their own calendar.
Officials in San Diego County districts say they're still in the early stages of developing plans for the new school year, but some details are emerging. Under the state guidance, students will have their temperatures checked regularly. Students will need to be separated by 6 feet in the classroom. Students and teachers will be required to wear face coverings. In Chula Vista's elementary schools, teachers will wear face shields instead of masks.
Especially in elementary school age, kids need to see the teacher.
Francisco Escobedo is the superintendent of the Chula Vista Elementary School District. The district was supposed to start its school year on July 20th, but it pushed back its start date to August 31st to meet health guidelines for safe reopening.
So think about hand sanitizer, making sure it's filled up every day, and making sure we have enough stations dispersed throughout the schools so it's readily available.
The state's guidance offers several possible scenarios. Schools could divide its student body in half and have them come to campus on alternating weeks. Some schools might do half days. Escobedo says the district surveyed parents and about 80% wanted their students to return to campuses to some degree. But distance learning will be an option for students who might be living with at-risk family members.
So everyone has a different rationale and specific reasons why they want to stay or go to school. So we definitely want to meet the needs of our individual families.
But returning students to school is a top priority for San Diego Unified School District, which is the second largest district in the state.
We desperately want to bring our students back onto our campuses in the fall.
Richard Barrera is the vice president of San Diego Unified School Board.
We don't want to do staggered schedules. We don't want to do half days. Our students need to be in school all day. Our parents need our students to be in school all day.
But to do that, Barrera says districts will need more federal and state funding than has already been promised. Otherwise, it'll be back to distance learning. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
Our partners at iNewsSource are reporting that Gomper's Preparatory Academy in southeastern San Diego is planning to lay off more than a third of its teachers. The charter school blames budget cuts linked to COVID-19 and says decisions were based on seniority. But some teachers say the layoffs are aimed at supporters of their new union, which hasn't reached a contract since forming last year. The school board is expected to approve a new budget later this month. iNewsSource has previously reported that Gomper students have struggled with some of the lowest test scores in the county. It looks like we'll finally get a break from the heat, especially in the inland valleys. Jeff Cornish has your forecast.
Well, we're glad that you're tuned in to us here on KPBS this evening. We have a pretty good weather pattern here setting up. If you like something more comfortable, especially those of you in inland areas where it's been especially hot, but we had a hot week in the city of San Diego as well. An onshore breeze is changing things and we're turning cooler. We're going to take a big step into the cooler air on Friday, even in the interior. Now, with this onshore wind, that marine layer, those low clouds, will be a little bit more of an issue in the coming days into the weekend. So you will notice an increase in those low morning clouds for the coastal areas. Some of that on Friday, but even more significantly into Saturday. Tonight, though, we get down to 49 in Ramona, 71 still in Borrego Springs, and into Escondido around 55 for your overnight lows. Friday, nice to see a little blue on the map. A cooler setup with a trough of low pressure in place. Even some spotty thunderstorms up into the Sierras. Not for us, though, but it will be cooler. And you'll notice it's still toasty in Borrego Springs at 104, but not as hot as it was. And we'll transition to an even cooler time into Saturday there. Mount Laguna, 73. San Diego, 73. And into Oceanside and Chula Vista will be around the low to mid 70s. So cooler air prevails, and this is when we do experience that cool down even into the deserts of the eastern part of the region. Places like Borrego Springs will enjoy Saturday and Sunday, at least most likely. We don't want to assume anything about your weather preferences, but it will be more comfortable. So for the coast, we'll be pinned into the mid 70s. We'll warm back up a bit into the mid to upper 70s by Tuesday, and those low clouds will be a little more stubborn beginning on Saturday, but by the afternoon hours we look better. Inland areas, 79 Saturday, back into the low to mid 80s Monday and Tuesday, a little breezy into Sunday and Monday. Mountainous areas drop into the upper 60s on Saturday. Nice stretch though coming up, sunshine, some pleasant weather. And for the deserts, here's the payoff, 98 for your high on Saturday, still lots of sunshine, and we slowly warm back up into Monday and Tuesday. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
In the wake of protests across the country, local police agencies have been forced to take a hard look at how officers are trained. There's a new push for de-escalation policy at the San Diego Police Department, but as KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregesser explains, many attitudes and procedures among local police are deeply ingrained.
All right, so during the presentation, it's about a 2-hour presentation that I condensed to about half an hour.
The vast majority of the countless interactions police officers have with the public are peaceful and end without incident. On a community outreach day last August, San Diego police officer and use of force expert Ken Kreese spent time talking about the positive encounters. But he also talked about when things get confrontational and people blame police.
If you just did what I told you to do, we won't have any issues. I won't be wearing anything on my belt. Everyone agree? What's happened to our society? What's happened to our society? The one that I grew up in, man, my dad told me to do something, I better do it.
Kreese goes on to make several comments like this during the presentation.
Right? Put your hands on the steering wheel because officers want to see your hands. You don't start digging under your seat. Hang on, officer. Right?
His point seems to be that if people didn't resist arrest, police wouldn't have to use force.
What happened? When did these officers become the suspect and the suspect became the victim? When did that happen? When did these officers become the suspect and the suspect became the victim? When did that happen?
That put fear in my heart for my sons. What happened to our society? Does he understand that people have had different historical, how we've been dealt with in this country has been different? Does he understand that everyone has not had the same experience as a white male growing up in the United States?
Layla Aziz wasn't at the event, but we showed her the video. The community activist from Southeast San Diego says the attitude Kreese is displaying is a big reason why there is so much fear and mistrust of police in the neighborhood she serves.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
With massive protests against police violence on people of color, local law enforcement agencies are vowing reform. Departments across the county have agreed to end the use of the chokehold and are requiring at least 4 hours of de-escalation training to comply with a new state law. But District Attorney Summer Steffen says only 700 officers of 5,000 countywide have been trained so far. Aziz and others welcome the de-escalation training, but say it isn't enough. They want departments to completely overhaul how officers are hired and trained. And so far, that isn't on the table.
So ideally, we always try to test people's compliance verbally.
Here's Sergeant Michael Bells last August. He's the in-service training manager at the San Diego Police Academy and was explaining the department's use of force procedures.
If they are punching at me or striking me or kicking me, I may respond in a similar fashion, or if they're assaulting, I may even go up to the level of a baton to overcome that resistance.
We asked what limits police officers might have on how much force they can use.
So we don't normally put limits on the type of force or the number of times someone will be struck, because it's all based on the suspect's resistance.
Police officers are used to literally barking out commands and having people follow the directions.
Philip Stinson studied policing across the country and says officers have to change how they interact with people on the street.
If simply the police officers would take the opportunity to step back and explain why they're taking actions, why they're doing what they're doing, and why it's necessary to do so, I think you'll find that people generally are more compliant than if officers are simply barking out commands at people.
They right here, bro. Hey, bro, you can't do that.
Body cam and cell phone videos increased criticism of police.
All you're going to see is about 100 videos this year of what? Officer on top of somebody, hitting somebody, and then they play it like we do that 99% of the time.
The videos frustrate Crees and other officers because they represent a tiny fraction of their day-to-day actions.
Mine never made the news when a guy tried to draw a gun on me and shoot me and my partner. And when I asked him off the record, were you going to try to kill me? He looked at me and put his head down, refused to answer. He answered the question, didn't he? That never made the news. You know, that happens quite often.
We have to work hard to get rid of the ones that are causing the problem.
Assemblywoman Shirley Weber has helped bring about different types of police reform, including the requirement that all officers have de-escalation training. But she says this is a small part of a large culture shift that is needed.
If you eliminate those one or two, then you start changing people's perception of behavior. That's number one. And then if you start as a part of your recruitment to bring in different kinds of officers from the beginning and give them the support they need to change the culture, then you at least begin the process. And it may not be as long as we think.
Tomorrow, we'll look at a California police department that has made de-escalation central to its mission. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
And KPBS asked the San Diego Police Department for updated comments based on the recent protests, but a spokesman didn't respond. KPBS video journalist Andy Duckleth contributed to this report. Companies across the country are responding to systemic racism, and now Amazon has announced it is taking action by no longer providing facial recognition technology to police. The company says the change is set to last a year, while Congress has time to implement appropriate rules for police use of the technology. Amazon partners with more than 1,300 law enforcement agencies through the Doorbell Ring app. Ring said last year that it does not govern how evidence is used by police. A young woman whose lungs were damaged by the coronavirus has received a double lung transplant. Doctors at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago performed the 10-hour surgery last week. The woman, who is in her 20s, had lungs that were completely plastered in tissue around them. She had no serious underlying medical conditions and is recovering now, but has a long way to go. This is the first known lung transplant in the U.S. for a COVID-19 patient. Those with underlying medical conditions might be more at risk of severe illness if infected with the coronavirus. But a recent study finds at least one common condition also raises the risk of death. Mandy Gaither has more.
More than 100 million Americans have high blood pressure, according to the American Heart Association. And a recent study published in the European Heart Journal finds those patients also have twice the risk of dying from COVID-19. Researchers studied records of more than 2,800 patients treated in Wuhan, China. One of the study's lead authors says nearly half of the patients who died had high blood pressure, which was a much higher percentage compared to those who only had mild COVID-19 symptoms. The group also looked at high blood pressure medicines. Some doctors had feared ACE2 inhibitors and ARBs could make it easier for the virus to infect cells. But the study found the opposite. Based on their findings, researchers suggest patients not discontinue or change their usual antihypertensive treatment unless instructed by a doctor. They say it's important for those with high blood pressure to realize their increased risk, to take good care of themselves during this pandemic, and if they're infected with coronavirus, they may need more medical attention. For today's Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
The CDC says others at higher risk for severe COVID-19 infection include those over the age of 65, anyone with chronic lung disease or moderate to severe asthma, serious heart conditions, and people who are immunocompromised.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, about face. The highest-ranking military officer apologizes for appearing with the president during the peaceful protests. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
An update now on our top story. Firefighters have stopped the forward spread of a brush fire east of Hamul. It started just before 12:30 this afternoon in the 17,000 block of Skyline Truck Trail in Lawson Valley near Hamul. Evacuation orders were issued for nearby homes, and right now it is about 100 acres and 10% contained. And today, San Diego County public health officials announced 3 more people have died from the virus and 161 new cases. Tomorrow, gyms, bars, day camps, and other businesses can resume operations with increased safety measures. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.